that's the beauty of Tai Chi, is that we can say, oh, there are so many things that I have to worry about or think about. I have this is my to-do list. I have work, personal, things that have to do with Patrick, and things that have to do with Olivia. That's my to-do list. And so, of course, we have to accomplish things in life, but it's nice to sometimes just go, you know what? That's too much for me right now.
That's right.
Put it right here. Let's chunk it out the window and let's do some Tai Chi. So we always, go ahead.
I said, that's what I thought. Before I have to go pick out a casket, Tai Chi might be good.
I had to do that last year with my stepdad, and I felt like I was in some, like I really wasn't in my body. Like I was doing things, I was going through these motions, and I'm like, this isn't my life, but it was. So I certainly understand the process, and writing an obituary where you have to encompass all that they were in just a short little space, and it just didn't feel right. So Miss Faye did want me to tell you that she was praying for you. All right, so let's get started by opening and closing our hands and getting our bodies a little warmed up. It is cold, and I can't even believe how cold it is. This morning I woke up, and I'm pretty dramatic when it comes to cold weather, so I will complain, and I'm just miserable. So this morning I got up, I'm like, it is really cold in this house. Well, I went to check, and the heater wasn't on. The air conditioner was on. Well, I was under a heating blanket all day yesterday, so I didn't even realize the heat wasn't on. So there that is. My poor babies were bundled under their blankets, and the house was 60 degrees. So, yeah, here we go, warming up that body. All right, so let's just get us some good deep breaths. Sometimes when we have that to-do list and so much on our mind, we really start holding our breath even more and don't realize that breathing can help relax our body, can help with our concentration, help that oxygen go through, pump through our bodies. So just do quick checks with yourself to make sure you are breathing. Even if you sit down, put your hands in your lap and just do breathing. Our goal is to do that deep breathing throughout our Tai Chi. So let's start with our neck exercises. And thinking about body awareness, our feet are about shoulder width apart. We have that good posture. Our shoulders are relaxed. We bring our hands up, palms down, towards our chin and chest. Push away from our bodies, and then follow those hands all the way down, chin going towards our chest. Hands come back up, towards our chin and chest. Push away, and follow those hands all the way down. One more time. Inhale as we come up, and then whenever you're ready, exhale that air. Our other neck exercise, here, drop one hand, follow this one as you look towards the shoulder, come back to the front, switch hands, look towards that other shoulder until you feel a little bit of stretch. Side to side. The more you do this, the more flexible that neck becomes. Get a little lost on this one sometimes because it feels so good to stretch my neck. Now let's Roll our shoulders forward. And roll them back. It's like a little massage we give ourselves. Big circle with our hands and push down. Inhale up and down. For our spine, let's get our ball, separate the heavens and the earth. One hand goes down, the other goes up towards the ceiling. This is the best camera angle I think I've ever found.
It's good.
I'll never be able to do it again. That has been one of the things about doing the virtual, is figuring out what angle to put that camera. And I appreciate y'all being so patient with me as I learn on how to do it.
We're enjoying it.
Good. I was thinking about it yesterday. I was like, I think I went too fast. So we'll just spend the next few weeks really going over our basic 6 movements and getting comfortable with those. Let's go one to side, still stretching that spine. Those advanced movements, they're very intimidating. There's a lot of, that's why they're called advanced. There's a lot going on with them, so there's no reason to have to rush to them. It would go against what we believe in Tai Chi, right? To rush. Slow, smooth, continuous. Now for our hips, we shift our weight to one leg, put the heel forward, hands back. I like to stand sideways on this one. And then we come back, and then that foot goes back into the angle, kind of like a kickstand. Reminding ourselves to breathe. Shift the weight to the other leg. Let's take that heel forward, hands back, and then switch. I feel my leg going, okay, that's enough. Holding that weight that whole time. Now for our knees, we shift our weight to one leg, lift, tap and punch, bring it back, shift, lift, tap and punch. And I just realized I skipped the other hip stretch. I'll go back to it next.
Okay.
I think that's the second time I've done that. One more on each side. Now let's go back to our hips, where we're shifting our weight to one leg and then tapping that foot out. Meanwhile, our hands are stacked and our hands go in the direction of the weight shift. So if I'm shifting my weight to my right leg, shift, tap out, bring it back, switch my hands, shift, tap out. Remember, if you have any problems with balance, this is a good one to just skip these arm movements and hold on to a chair and shift the weight side to side. That's honestly where the magic happens in getting that the muscle stronger to for falls prevention. So sometimes we have the hand movements and that makes it Tai Chi, but it doesn't necessarily go towards the falls prevention. All right, back to our knees. Our second knee movement, we shift and then we step heel toe. We're going to shift our weight to that front foot as we punch. Bring it back, and then our feet go side by side. I'm going to turn to the side just so that as a reminder that it's a small step forward, shift. You keep that back heel on the ground. You do not take that knee further than your toe. Those are just those little reminders. Feet side by side. So we shift, step, shift the weight and punch, and back. The camera doesn't always show that very well because of the angle. But it's just a slight weight shift forward to that front leg, keeping that back leg on the floor or foot on the floor, just like that. Shift, step, shift and punch, shift it back, side by side. Shift, step, shift, shift it back, side by side. Now for our ankles, we shift our weight and we do heel, toe, heel, toe, heel, toe. Rocking that foot. Shift to the other foot and rock that foot. Heel, toe, heel, toe. It's a good one to do if you find yourself seated a lot. Sometimes you have to be in a car and you don't have a choice but to be seated. You can just rock those feet side to side like this. Heel, big toe, little toe, and then heel, toe. You can rotate them in circles. Helps with the range of motion of your ankle as well as circulation. Other foot, big toe, little toe. There we go. Shake it out. I'm going to give you some stretches that aren't necessarily in our Tai Chi world, but they are stretches nonetheless. So we think about our wrist. You know, people get arthritis in their hands and in their wrist. And so if you put your hands out straight in front of you, your hands are together like this. If you come straight back, keeping those, see my hands are still together. If you come straight back to where if you look down, you see a W. You see that kind of a W? You feel that stretch in your wrist. You feel that?
Yeah.
So you're in control of how far you come back. That's in the Arthritis Foundation exercise program, and I've always just really liked that exercise for your wrist. My bones are popping as I come in and out of that stretch. So another one for our fingers where we tap our thumb to each finger, open and close to that thumb. And that helps work those finger joints. Sometimes those, with this weather, our arthritis tends to flare up a little bit and we have more pain than usual, or when the weather changes, like when on New Year's Eve when it started raining. My mama really talked about how much she hurt that day. She said, you know, it's raining when your body's hurting. My bones, my joints just freeze up when it's cold. And so when you're like this, you tense up those muscles. You know how we talked about pain as part of the pain cycle. So I have pain and I tense up because I'm in pain. When I tense up, I'm causing myself more pain by using that tension, and that makes the pain cycle continue. Whereas if I learn to relax those muscles, whether I do it intentionally with breath, seated, the way I'm moving my body and not curling up in pain, then I can stop that cycle and hopefully help with the pain from arthritis. So that's something to think about. I know I've been guilty of tensing up, mainly when I'm cold. You know, I tense up because I'm cold. Or if you're in pain, you know, you just curl up in a ball in your bed and you just hurt. If you can find a way to relax that tension, then it can release some of that pain. So keep that in mind. All right, so those are our stretches from head to toe. Do you have any specific questions about any of those?
The one where we do this, can we do that again?
So that one's for our hip. And while I'm up close, I'll show you. My hands are I'm stacking them like this, right? So they're, it's like I were to take my palms and open a curtain, right? And then I flip them and I'm opening that curtain. Whenever I'm taking my hands from side to side, I stop here. You see, we want to stay within our frame. So you see my body ends right here and I stop there. If I were to keep going, you see my body leans. And if I'm leaning, I'm falling. So we want to keep our body upright and take that side, flip, side. Okay, flip, side to side. So you see my body is staying in the same place. It's my hands that are moving.
I think I had my hands up too high.
I was going to say also that if you have them too high, then you start creating tension in your shoulder.
Okay. I was feeling that.
So, hey, you get extra points for paying attention to your body, because that's what Tai Chi is supposed to teach us, body awareness. So you start feeling yourself having bad posture and you feel that, so you correct it. You feel yourself having tension places and you release that. So I keep them here where my shoulders can be relaxed and flip. So that's what's happening with your hands. A lot of times people tend to want to do more, so they go way over here, but that's not necessary. So the most important thing on that move is what's happening with our legs. And because it's a hip warm up, we're shifting the weight to one leg. See, my body stays upright. I'm shifting that leg or weight to that leg, and then taking this other foot and just tapping it out to the side just a little bit and bringing it back, shift, tap, back, shift, tap, and back. So that's a place where people can get caught up in the lean. So we don't want to lean. We want to stay upright as we shift the weight and then tap it out. So we want to keep it small as we go side to side, warming up that hip. Now, to put the two together, the direction of our hands is in the direction of the weight shift. So if I'm shifting to this leg, that's when my hands go. This way, I get to that frame, then I tap. Bring the foot back, flip my hands, shift as my hands go to that side, and tap out, back, flip hands, shift, tap, back, flip hands, shift, tap, back, flip hands. Feeling that rhythm?
Yes.
Now, I will share this with you. If you want to do this exercise seated, oh gosh, hit the table. If you're seated and you're wanting to do this movement, that stretching your hip, okay, you're not going to do this from a seated position because that's like falling out of your chair. And also, if you have hips that go out of place easily, mine do, then that's a horrible position to put your hips in. So what you do when you're seated is take this leg and lay it open. So I'm just laying that knee to the side and bringing that hip up. So even if you do this standing where we're shift, tap together, even if you do it standing, doing it seated is an additional stretch. So you can actually do both and benefit from both of them. So with my hands, I'm going towards the direction of the weight shift, right? And when you're seated, your weight shift is the leg that's not opening, or the leg that doesn't have the knee that's laying to the side. So I'm here, lay that knee open, bring it back, flip, shift, lay that knee open, bring that knee back, flip. So the shift goes in the direction of the leg that's not moving, and you have a choice here if you want to push that foot into the floor, the leg that's not moving. So here I'm pushing this leg into the floor, and then I'm opening that leg, bringing it back up. Then I release that push from this, flip my hands, shift. So I'm pushing this leg into the floor now, laying that one open. And then when I flip my hands, I'm releasing that off of that leg. Does that make sense?
Let's do that again. I really like the feel of that. I can feel it more sitting.
Okay, let me ask you this. Do you ever have any problems with lower back pain?
No.
Okay, well, sometimes people have lower back pain and it's because their hips are real tight and all of these muscles are connected. And so sometimes that can be a problem, is not stretching your hips. So, but I like this stretch too. It's different than the standing one, and it really stretches that hip as you, and you can forget the arm movements if you just want to experience the leg part, and laying that knee to the side and letting gravity stretch that muscle just by gravity, laying that knee to the side, and then bring it back, and then laying that one open. So if you want to add the hand movements, let's do it a few more times without hand movements. So we laid this one to the side and we're pushing this one into the floor. You don't have to push that one into the floor. Those are just different choices. It's whatever feels right to you, what you think you can benefit from. The pushing the foot into the floor helps engage muscle, and that's how we start strengthening those muscles. But that you might want to do that later in a different exercise. And on this one, just simply lay that leg open here and then lay the other one. There's no right or wrong. It's just how you choose to do it. Because there's other places in the Tai Chi where you can push the feet into the floor and get that benefit. It doesn't have to be here. But if you are adding the hands, then the hands are opposite of the leg that's laying to the side. So here, and I get backwards on this. So because I feel like if I'm pushing my arms or hands to the side, in my mind, it makes sense that that leg lays down. So guess what? If that's what you do, that's okay. There. So it's like a counterbalance thing.
That feels good, both to my ankles and my back.
Yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah.
The lower body, the upper body movements like neck, shoulders, and spine, they're the same sitting down as standing up because there's no footwork from the standing or seating or from the standing position. So seated is no different. But when it comes to these lower body movements, then there is some differences. So for instance, the other hip movement where we take the foot out, and then when we're standing, we put that toe back at a kickstand. Well, you're not going to do that seated because you'll fall out of your chair. So whenever you're seated and you do that, you put your heel forward, hands back, and then just come to seated position. So that's this movement seated. You put that heel out forward. Let me change the camera. So you have the heel forward, hands back, and then you come back to seated, and then you switch here. So that's the seated version of our hip stretches. All my bones are popping. I hope you can't hear that so loudly today.
I can't hear it.
And then here, there's that one we've been working on. And here. This has got my hip so loose, it doesn't feel like it did the very first time we did it.
No, I think I'll do both, but I like to seat it for that one.
Well, good. I'm glad that we talked about that. Sometimes people who are able forget the benefits of seated. I'm glad we talked about that. So even with our knee movements, wait, do you have any other questions about that? So that one was the one where we went here and tap to the side, flip, shift, tap. That was the standing version of that hip stretch. And then that seated one where we here. And then you also have the choice to simply hold the chair as you shift, tap, together, shift, tap. So see, that's another choice. Seated, you almost get that the stretch of your hip. You really experience that stretch. Standing, you're experiencing holding weight on your leg as you tap that out to the side. So yes, you're stretching that hip, but you're also using a lot of muscles in order to stay upright and not on the floor by having all your weight on that one leg. So the standing version is a strength thing. So you can experience that holding your chair if you have problems with balance, because we have good days and bad days with balance. And some days we can do it with ease, and other days we just want to hold on to something. So we can hold on to that chair, shifting our weight. You can tap, back, shift, tap, or maybe you think tapping that foot out to the side is scary because I'm really trusting that one leg to hold me. And so I'm kind of scared to lift that foot and tap it out to the side. I mean, that's a normal thought to have. So if you're not ready to lift that foot and tap it to the side, you can just shift the weight and shift the weight. So you're removing the weight from the leg, but you're not lifting it. So you can even add the hand movements here. Shift. So see, I'm not tapping in out to the side. There's no weight on it, but it's there. Then I switch, shift to this side. So I'm shifting the weight side to side, but I'm skipping that real scary part of lift and tap. See, that's a whole nother level, right?
Right.
Lift and tap. And that, again, that's why Tai Chi is so wonderful, is because we have these choices of the same movement, taken away, doing something a little different so that I feel comfortable. Maybe I'm not ready for this. Maybe I'm having a bad balance day. Maybe I'm having pain from that arthritis and I don't want to do that. So I shift and I shift and I shift. So that's warming up the muscles that surround our hip joints. And that gets us ready for any kind of movement, in our case, Tai Chi. But you can hold that chair, totally skip the arm movements, and tap out too. So I'm not meaning to confuse you by giving you so many options, but just to reassure you that there are lots of choices within our movements for what you feel comfortable with. All right, what other questions do you have?
That's it.
Okay, so we have, so let's go over some, oh, another chair over there. There's already one back here. All right, so we can go over the lower body stretches. Now, like I told you, the neck, shoulders, and spine is the same seated. So it's just the fact that I'm seated and, I would come up, push out and down, that's the same thing. It's when we get to our lower body that it changes. So with our hips, we just talked about laying that knee to the side, and then we talked about bringing that heel forward and then back to seated position. Now, when it comes to our knee movements, when we stand up, we shift the weight and we tap that foot out, whether it's close to the ground or whether we pretend there's a cup there, we lift, tap, and punch. And when we're seated, we lift and put that toe out there and punch the opposite hand. In my opinion, seated knee movements are a lot more difficult than even standing. So here I'm lifting and I'm putting that toe out there as I punch the opposite arm and bringing it back. Here, lift. To me, that feels a lot more difficult than shift, lift, tap, and punch. The reason why is because if I'm standing, you see my foot only goes that high. That's how, it stays real close to the ground. Tap, and then bring, lift, tap, and punch. So you see that's not that big of a movement for my hip. But if I'm seated, I'm already at this position. My knee is already here. So whenever I put that toe out there, that's a lot more difficult to do than here. And so that's why you feel it differently when you're seated, is because you're already at this position, lifting that knee out. So keep that in mind. You can leave that toe closer to the ground, or if you scoot back in your chair and you have to rely less on your thigh muscles to lift and tap. So you can feel that difference there. And that's all based on me sitting back in my chair a little bit more, so my thigh is supported by the seat. And when I lift and put that toe out there, it's not as difficult on my thigh muscles as if I were to sit at the edge of my chair, lift and put out there. See, I'm having to really carry the whole weight of my thigh. You see what I'm talking about?
I feel it in my knee as well.
Yeah, and that's a knee stretch, but because your whole leg is involved, then you feel it in your hip and your thigh.
Yeah, and the lower back.
Because your lower back is having to compensate for that leg being out there, so holding yourself up. So that's the seated knee stretch. And then the other one, you know, when we stand up and we step heel toe and then we shift the weight forward and shift the weight back, well, we can't do that seated or else we'll come out of our chair. So what we do is lift and put that heel out there versus putting the toe out there. The first one, this time we put that heel out there and then we punch with that opposite arm. So to me, it's helpful to push the opposite leg into the floor as I lift, and just like that. It's helpful to me to push that foot into the floor, and that gives me a little secure and balance. Push, lift, and come back. Shift, lift, put that heel out there. So again, you can try it with sitting a little bit further back in your chair, lift, putting that heel out there versus the toe, and that's a different experience. I feel a major stretch in my calf muscle whenever I put that heel out there. I mean, yes, it's warming up my knee because my knee is moving, but pulling that toe towards me really stretches my calf muscle.
Yeah.
So that's the seated version of knees. Any questions about those?
No.
I just prefer doing knees standing, even if you have to use a chair, because it's a lot easier of a movement to lift and tap. Lift, I'll stand to the side. I told you I need an invisible or a see-through chair. Lift and tap here, even if I need that chair for balance. That movement is easier. That's just my opinion, that it's easier whenever you're standing versus seated for that. So using a chair is a great benefit. Not everybody can stand though. I know when I worked in the nursing home, there are people that are confined to wheelchairs and they're not able to stand. So they just do what they have to do, even if it's just lifting a little bit, lifting that heel. You're in control of what feels right for you. And then the seated for our ankles, the first one we do standing is heel, toe, but you can probably do seated pretty easily, heel, toe. It's whenever we get to the big toe, little toe movement that is a little more awkward when you're seated. So I like to sit back and put my feet in the air and do kind of like windshield wipers, whether you do one at a time or just rotate that ankle counterclockwise and then clockwise, just to, there's more popping, just to use those joints. heel, toe, big toe, little toe, like windshield wipers. That's how you can do that one from the seated position. Very good. So now we have some experience with seated. Are you seated?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do it from there. So for our Tai Chi movement, we can do seated where we still think about body awareness. My feet are about shoulder width apart. I'm sitting more on the edge of my seat. Turn to the side, you can see. That's mainly because I'm short. Now, if I were to sit back in my chair, you know, my feet aren't secured onto the floor. But so I scoot up in the chair, and that way my feet are secured on the floor. I'm about hip width apart. So when we do our Tai Chi movement, you know, we start with with commencement, we bring those hands up and down. We follow our legs here towards our body, come up, take our hands out, and then come back to ourselves. So what we do with our legs to engage our legs, whenever we bring our hands up, we're not doing anything with our legs. But when we bring our hands down, just like if we were standing, we would shift our weight to our right foot. So we push our right foot into the floor. And when we come here, we release it. And when we take our hands out, just like in our standing, we would shift our weight to that left foot. Now I'm going to push my left foot into the floor. And then I come back and release both of my legs. So neither one of my legs am I pushing into the floor. So that's how you engage your legs whenever you're seated. Of course, that's a choice. You cannot do anything with your legs and experience the Tai Chi movement just with your hands out and in. Now adding our legs in, we bring our hands up, nothing's happening. When we bring those hands down, we push that right foot into the floor, come back to our bodies, release that right foot, and then as we take our hands out, push the left foot into the floor, and then we bring our hands back and release that left foot. Let's try that again. So this is our seated basic six and how we engage our legs. So we come up, down, push that right foot into the floor, release that right foot, push that left foot, now release the left foot. How's that feel?
Okay, I can get that.
So that way, you know, sometimes you don't want to do it standing. Maybe don't have the space, or maybe you just don't feel like doing standing. You want to do it this way because there's benefits of doing it both ways. Here, push, release, push, release. So that was a push to the right leg, release, and then a push in the left leg and release in commencement. When we do open and close, I don't push either one of my legs into the floor, because if we're standing, we're not shifting weight. We're holding our weight on both legs. So there's commencement, open and close. So now we're thinking about single whip. Well, when we do single whip standing, we step out. Well, we're not going to step out when we're seated because we may fall out of our chair. So we translate it into pushing our feet into the floor. So if we have open and close, all right. So whenever we do single whip standing, we shift our weight left, and then we push, turn here, release, push, down. So it's pushing to the left, and then release it, and then push to the right and release it in that one movement. So let me be more clear. As there's not an exact science to it. It's not like, oh, you left your weight or you pushed that left leg into the ground too long. That's not a thing. You're in control of that. You can keep that left leg pushed from the time you go out here. You can keep it pushed there and then release it, or you can push it and then release it there. Because the longer you have that foot pushed into the ground, the longer that muscle is engaged, the longer that muscle's tight. And so you may not be able to keep it pushed down that long. You know, that's an endurance thing. So just keep that in mind. You're not being forced to leave it there a certain amount of time. Push here. Now release it down. And when you come down, push your right one. Here. It's almost like a seated march with pushing your feet. Excuse me. A seated march, pushing your foot into the floor. So my feet aren't moving, but I'm pushing my right and then pushing my left. Pushing my right and then pushing my left. So it's like a march, but it's almost like you're not really seeing it because it's must shift, shift. So when I push my right foot, I'm not pushing my left. And then I release my right leg, push the left. Am I making sense?
Yes.
It's pushing the right and release the right, pushing the left, releasing the left. So I don't know if march is the best description, but it kind of feels like that, where I'm pushing, release, pushing, release. That's another thing you can do to help strengthen those leg muscles, is just pushing them into the ground and release. A little seated push march. I'm making stuff up here. But you're just going back and forth. Back and forth. And so you probably feel in your seat that when you push one leg into the ground, then this part of your butt kind of comes off the chair. You're pushing that to the ground and then change here.
You can feel the glute muscles all engaging.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So that's a way to exercise even from a seated position. It's a way to exercise in a place where maybe you're supposed to just be sitting there. Think about in a doctor's office in the waiting room, and you're probably antsy and they're 30 minutes behind and you got to do something. So you can sit and push those legs into the ground and engage muscle. You know, that's a way you can do exercise, maybe in a place where you don't feel comfortable just all out exercising. So that's the exercise. When we do commencement, that's what that is. I'm pushing my right foot into the ground whenever I would shift the weight, and then I'm releasing it and then pushing my left foot into the ground when I would have shifted my weight. So it's up, down, push the right, release the right, push the left as my arms go out, and bring it back and release both legs. And then open and close, no shift.
I'm getting the call.
All right, dear. I'll finish it up and you can come in about 5 minutes later.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So just to finish this this up with the seated, got 7 minutes. We come up, right here, shift left, back, release both legs, open and close. So I push left as my arms go out, release, and push right as my hands come down, release. So it's something to work with, doing those movements. You can start with not doing any pushing your feet into the ground. You can simply do our basic 6 movements from a seated position where we go. So nothing's happening with my legs. I mean, as far as you're concerned, I have no legs. All I have is the top part of my body. So I commence. Open and close. Single whip. Waving hands in clouds. Open and close. Single whip. Waving hands in clouds. Open and close. And close it out. So that is seated Tai Chi, our basic 6. So we didn't do anything with our legs. So that's a choice we can make one day is, hey, I'm just going to concentrate on that gentle, fluid movement. I can even close my eyes because I'm seated and I'm supported by this chair and I don't have to worry about running into a wall or anything. I can just really feel the fluid movement of my Tai Chi. So I can, like I said, close my eyes, pay attention to my posture, make sure I'm not holding tension in my shoulders. I come up, commence, breathe in, open and close. Single whip. Waving hands in clouds. Open and close. Single whip. Waving hands in clouds. Open and close. And close it out. So you might find that whenever you do your seated Tai Chi, the basic 6 movements, it goes a little bit faster than when you do your standing Tai Chi. And that's understandable because you don't have to wait for the leg movement. So there's not the time for the weight shift before the hand movement. Here, weight shift. And then especially with waving hands in clouds, where we're step, change hands, wave, shift, step, change hands, wave. So there's the added extra time because of the time it takes to shift weight and to step. So if the seated version feels a little fast for you, that's why. But you can pull out any movement. You know, I'm a big fan of pulling out waving hands and clouds for the sake of relaxation, for the sake of stress relief, just that repetitive motion. It's just, to me, one of the most beneficial movements. So you can do it seated and experience just that repetitive, almost meditative for going side to side. And if you want to open your eyes, that's fine. Or if you want to close your eyes, but just to experience the fluid circles of waving hands and clouds here. It's not a complete circle, it's more like an oval or an ellipse, but it's circular in the fact that it's never ending. So if you want to take some time doing these movements seated, then that's how you do it. So I'm glad we explored the seated version this week for, you know, just to have something different rather than trying to hurry up and rush and try to get through those advanced movements, because they're called that because they are more advanced. They're a lot more involved. And I would rather you feel more comfortable with the basic movements, seated or standing, before we rush and move on. So whatever feedback you have for me, please share that with me so I know what your needs are. We can spend a lot more time doing our basic 6 seated if that's what you would like to do. I'm happy to do that. So, and we can even do advanced movements seated and skip the footwork to begin with, if you want to try that. So at the end of every class, we end by beating ourselves, beating our thighs, giving ourselves a little thigh massage. Helps with the, oh gosh, I had a brain fart. Lactic acid, that's what it's called. That's why your muscles get sore, is a buildup of lactic acid. And so when we hit our legs like this, it helps break up that lactic acid. And then we do tense and release, tense and release, gather and relax. And we do the big shoulder circle. I like this one for practicing breath. I like to sit and close my eyes and do this movement of breathing, as well as that open and close, just to calm my heart if it's ever kind of feeling a little tense or stressed. Maybe, you know, life is tough. Life can get us in anxious moments, and we want to control that by helping calm ourselves down, having those tools. So to end, we have our strength. That's our fist, our friendship, our fingers together, our humility, where that thumb is bent in. So our strength, friendship, and humility, and we put those together, and in mutual respect, we say namaste. I will see y'all next week. Happy New Year. So good to be back in the swing. It was good to have a break.